Hello, good morning. This is Dr. G.K. Kapoor, former professor, business and corporate laws, IMI, New Delhi. I have been teaching this particular subject for more than 50 years now. In our series on law of contracts, today I'm going to talk about details with respect to capacity to contract. You know, just a second, I'll share the screen with you, showing you the PPTs. One of the essentials of a valid contract that we had taken note of is that the persons to the contract or parties to the contract must be competent of contracting. Now, who are competent to contract? Section 11 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 identifies only the following three kinds of persons who shall be competent to make a valid contract. Number one, only those who are of the age of majority. Number two, those who are of a sound mind. And number three, those who are not forbidden under any other law. Now, let us take up each one of these one by one. Those who are not of the age of majority are called as minors. A minor is, although we have already discussed this, but let me very briefly repeat that a minor, as per Section 3 of the Indian Majority Act, is a person who has not attained the age of 18 years. That means a person of the age less than 18 years is a minor. And we have also talked about in our previous lectures that any contract with or by a minor is void ab initio. We get this law on the combined reading of Section 10 and 11 of the Indian Contract Act. Because Section 10 says only those who are competent to make a contract can make a valid contract. And Section 11 says that only those who are of the age of majority, that is, those who are minors, cannot make valid contract. Thus, any contract with or by a minor shall be void ab initio. We had discussed the very popular case on this subject, and that is that of Mori Bibi versus Dharamdas Ghosh. I'm not repeating the facts of the case once again here, since we have already discussed the same in details earlier. Now, please also note that in the Mori Bibi versus Dharamdas Ghosh itself, it was held by the House of Lords that whatever benefits the minor has received, the minor, Mr. Dharamdas Ghosh, in that particular case, had received an advance of rupees 8,000 rupees against his properties worth 20,000 rupees. So it was held that he was under no obligation to return back that benefit received, that is rupees 8,000, and could get his properties also released from the mortgage. However, there are certain exceptions. That is, where a contract with a minor shall not be void ab initio, rather it shall be enforceable. These exceptions are, number one, that where a minor is a promisee or a beneficiary of a transaction. Say, for instance, where minor has sold certain goods on credit to a person who is of the age of majority, the other party cannot avoid making the payment, saying that you, being a minor, have no right to claim the money, the transaction being void ab initio. No. The contracts with a minor or by a minor have been made void ab initio, primarily to protect the interests of the minors, not to put the benefits, not to put the minors into troubles or loss of rights. So minor will certainly be in a position to recover back the price of the goods that he has sold on credit. But a minor cannot ratify a transaction even after attaining the age of majority. Say a contract which was entered into by the person when he was of the age of 17 and a half. Now, after he has completed 18 years of age, the other party cannot ask him to ratify the agreement entered into when he was 17 and a half. The logic behind this is that ratification invariably goes back to the point of time or becomes operative from the point of time when the act was first done. When the act was first done, that is when the contract was actually made, he was a minor. So the transaction being void ab initio cannot be validated after he has attained the age of majority. Now, there may arise an interesting situation. Say a person who looks pretty, broad and tall and looks plus 18, maybe even looks 20 years of age, but actually he is not even 18. So if, say, supposing he misrepresents his age, he tells the other party that he is of the age of majority, and maybe to this false claim he furnishes even an affidavit regarding his age, thereby inducing the other party to enter into the contract with him. What you think should be the view of the court in such cases? Let's say if the other party had advanced 1 lakh of rupees to a minor who misrepresented his age, can he recover his money back? Can the court order the minor to pay the money back? No, plain and simple answer shall be no. The reason is that if it were so permitted, then the very objective of the law to protect the minors against the unscrupulous characters, unscrupulous people will stand defeated. The unscrupulous person, knowing fully well that he is contracting with a minor, will ask him to first sign an affidavit declaring himself to be of the age of majority, then only he will give him that 1 lakh of rupees, otherwise not. So therefore, the law comes to the protection of such people and continues to declare these transactions as void. However, the courts over a period of time have deliberated upon the fact that should those who are younger in age, that is minors, be given the opportunity to outsmart those or to defraud those who are of the age of majority. Being a minor, one deliberately, portrays himself as of the age of majority and even files an affidavit to establish his point. So the courts have over a period of time held, and now the law is quite settled on the subject, that if the minor has the properties which he had gained by misrepresenting his age, and those properties can be traced, or if he still is in possession of the money which he had obtained by misrepresenting his age, then the same property or the money can be attached and be handed over to the other party. But if he has spent the money and it is not traceable, say he has not spent the money on buying certain assets, rather he has spent the money on travel, going for a Bharat Darshan, and he is not left with even a single paise of that money, then the law will remain the same, that he cannot be asked to make the payment or return back the money to the other party. Now, let us once again return back to the PPTs here. So one more exception in case of contracts with a minor is that where a minor has been supplied with necessaries of life or given any loan to purchase necessaries of life, or any dependent of the minor has been supplied with the necessaries or given loan for purchase of necessaries of life. Now, in such a situation, the law says that if minor has certain properties in his name, then the same may be attached for recovery of the amount given for necessaries or the value of the necessaries supplied to the minor. Two things are to be noted here. Number one, that the goods or services supplied to the minor or to any of his or her dependent must be necessities of life. Now, what is a necessity? What is comfort? What is luxury? The line of demarcation is very, very bleak. It's very difficult to draw an exact line of demarcation, because something which may be a necessity for one may be comfort or luxury for another. Roti, kapda, or makan, food, clothing, and shelter, is certainly a necessity for everyone. But then, किस तरह का खाना, किस तरह का घर, मकान, किस तरह का फूड, क्लोथिंग, यानी किस तरह के कपड़े, अब ये अलग अलग व्यक्ति के साथ भिन्न होगा. It will vary from person to person depending upon the social status in which that person is placed. In case of the minors, in India, education has been also held to be a necessity of life. But then once again, what kind of education, what level of education, education in what kind of institution, etc., will vary from person to person depending upon the social status the person belongs to. Now we have a decided case law to get an idea in this particular regard, the case of Nash versus Inman. In this particular case, Inman was a minor. He was a student doing his graduation from a college. He used to get his clothes stitched from a tailor and draper, जो कपड़ा बेचते भी हैं और कपड़ा सिल के भी देते हैं. उन्हें टेलर एंड ड्रेपर कहा जाता है. So he went to that tailor and draper and ordered for 11 fancy coats as a single order. Nash, the tailor and draper, knew that Inman is the son of a very rich person. Therefore, he executed the order and sent the bill for payment to his father. His father, on looking at the bill, became furious, said that he had sent his son for studies, not ऐशो आवारागर्दी के लिए. A person, even a child from a rich family, will generally not order for 11 coats as one order, and that too fancy coats, except probably to impress the newly acquired girlfriend. Inman, the minor, had certain properties in his name. Nash therefore filed a suit against Inman for attachment of those properties. But Inman's father proved to the satisfaction of the court that at the time those 11 fancy coats had been supplied to Inman, he was already in possession sufficient number of woolens in his possession. So therefore, not even a single coat was held to be a necessity of life, and Inman's properties could not be attached. Let us get back to the PPTs, and the next one, those who are incompetent of contracting are those who are mentally incompetent. Now, who shall be said to be mentally incompetent? Authors on the subject have divided these mentally incompetent people into three kinds: idiots, lunatics, and intoxicated persons. An idiot is a person who is a born mad, born fool, cannot protect his interests, therefore, effectively. Law must come to protection of such persons. Because an idiot is in a position even worse than a minor. So the same law which is applicable to the minors will also be applicable in relation to idiots, with the same exceptions that we have taken note of. That is, any contract, whether by an idiot, shall be void ab initio, subject to the exceptions that the transaction where it is for the benefit of the idiot can enforce it, and idiot's properties, if any, can be held liable for the necessities of life supplied to him or to any of his dependents. A lunatic, on the other hand, is not a born mad, but becomes mad, becomes insane at a later stage, and that too not permanently. So he gets the fits of madness. Whatever transactions he enters into when he is insane, they are as good or as bad as made with an idiot. What difference does it make whether a person is a born mad or became mad at a later stage? A mad is a mad. But if he enters into any contracts during the time of sanity, then the transaction shall be held enforceable. But the onus of proof that when the contract was made, he was of a sane mind will lie with the other party. And for that, a certificate from two doctors, one who is of the age of, one who is is a registered medical practitioner, and the other one must be an MBBS. So from two doctors, one MBBS and the other may be a registered medical practitioner, need not be an MBBS, will have to be submitted to the effect that when the contract was made, he was of a sane mind. Then the third is intoxicated persons. That means those who are so much under the influence of the drinks or drugs that one cannot make a rational judgment. So he is as good or as bad as a mad person. That is why the advice is given: say no to the drugs or drinks for the first time and every time. You never know when you may meet an unscrupulous person like Prem Chopra of the Hindi films, not as the real Prem Chopra, but as the kind of character that he has been playing. So he may engage a Saki. Saki means a beautiful woman. And diye ja jam pe jam. And after the person is completely down, then Prem Chopra may place certain documents before the man. to sign, whereby he transfers all his properties in favor of Mr. Prem Chopra. So be aware, all right? Be aware, say no to drinks for the first time and every time. I know the society pressures are pretty high on the present generation, but there are innumerable cases where people have reached the top of the echelon, top of the position in the organization, being a teetotaler. So that's no excuse that unless you drink, you cannot really move upwards. Then the third, you will just excuse me for a moment. Then the third and the last, persons who are incompetent of contracting shall be. That where a person is of the age of majority, person is of sound mind, but may be forbidden under any other law for the time being in force. Say, for instance, under Foreign Exchange Management Act, one may be forbidden to enter into a transaction with an Indian national. So if a person has entered into a contract with a person of a nationality, he is not allowed to, as per Foreign Exchange Management Act, the contract shall be avoided. Then similarly, the income tax law in India does not allow a person whose properties are being auctioned for non-payment of tax dues to be a bidder in that particular auction. So if he directly or indirectly purchases those properties, the sale or purchase will not be valid, it will be void. So we shall stop at this today. Thank you very much for having given me a patient hearing. See you again in the next